everyone. Welcome to the second annual Pi Day, where we celebrate 16 years of innovation at Amazon S3. I'm Aditya Kalyanakrishnan, and I'm part of the S3 product management team. I'm joined here by Neha Tyagi, who's a software development manager who'll come on a little bit later. And we're here to talk to you about how to build a resilient multi-region storage architecture with S3, S3 replication, and S3 multi-region access points. All right. So let's get started. So our agenda today, we're going to start with our customers first, just as we do at Amazon. And we're going to discuss some of the requirements that a specific customer has in building multi-region storage architectures. So we're going to use this customer's problem as a framework for us to cover the features that Amazon S3 provides and help guide us through how we can build a multi-region storage architecture. So we'll look at S3 replication, which forms the foundational building block of building multi-region storage in S3. We'll introduce a new feature called S3 Batch Replication that we're really excited to talk to you about, which allows you to replicate your existing data. And then we'll transition to S3 multi-region access points, which is a single global endpoint for all of your S3 data and helps you build multi-region applications with the same simple architecture as your single region storage. And then get into some of the best practices of all of these features that we talked about. This is where Neha comes on. And then we'll end it with a practical demonstration of all of these features coming together. All right? So now let's get into why customers need a multi-region storage architecture by looking at a specific customer example. So here we have a customer that has the need to make their data be available globally in a cost-efficient and a performant manner. So they have a follow-the-sun development model where they have teams in Asia, Europe, and the US, and they're all collaborating together on projects, and they're all working on shared data sets. And they need redundant copies of their data in regions that is closest to them, and so that way they have a local copy of their data that they can access really quickly. And they need these copies to be stored cost-effectively and also be performant, right? So this is a problem for customers across many industries and verticals. So we see this problem or this use case in the media and entertainment industry, where we have customers who want to share media artifacts across designers, content creators, and developers around the world. In the automotive and manufacturing industry, we have customers who have global manufacturing plants that want to be able to centralize all of their data within S3. And in the financial services industry, we have customers who have the need to have data be distributed geographically for compliance and availability purposes, right? So now we'll take this customer's problem and translate them into specific requirements that they have for Amazon S3. So firstly, they need to replicate all of their new data that's coming in to their primary bucket in the US region. And they want to be able to replicate that data to the two new regions that they want to hydrate in Asia and Europe. They also want to be able to replicate all of their existing data because they've had these buckets for a while to these two new regions. And then they want to provide a single global endpoint for their applications and partners so that they can continue using the same single region architecture and extend it seamlessly to a multi-region storage architecture. So over the course of this talk, we'll cover a number of the the features that S3 provides our customers to build a multi-region storage architecture and find the perfect balance between data protection, cost, and performance to meet their requirements. So the first set of features we're going to talk about, we'll go through the S3 replication suite of features. So S3 replication is, as I mentioned, the foundational building block of building multi-region storage in Amazon S3. And with S3 replication is an elastic, fully managed, low-cost feature that automatically replicates objects between buckets. At a high level, S3 replication enables you to create redundant copies of your data. But it's way more than just a second copy of your data. So with S3 replication, it's built on top of S3 bucket versioning. So you can go back to a previous version of your object, whether it's in your source bucket or your destination bucket, and be able to track changes and be able to recover from any accidental deletes. You also have a lot of flexibility in choosing what kind of storage class you want to store these replicated objects into in the destination buckets. And you can also change whether you want to replicate it within the same account or into a different account if you need to. Now, By storing multiple copies of your data, you can also use replication to reduce the latency required to access your data across the world. And this is exactly what our example customer that we talked about wants to use S3 replication for. And you can also use S3 replication to satisfy your compliance and regulatory obligations by either replicating within the same region, across different regions, or if you want to replicate with a set period of time, where we have S3 replication time control that gives you an SLA where we replicate 99.99% of your data within 15 minutes of uploading them. So we'll get into the specific features that S3 replication provides. The first one being flexibility. So with S3 replication, you have the flexibility to choose where your destination is, whether it is in the same region as your source bucket, or if it's in a different region using cross-region replication. So same region replication for replicating within the region, and cross-region replication, or CRR, for replicating it across different regions. And then you also have the convenience of using a two-way replication to be able to have a bidirectional sync of both your data and your metadata between buckets. This is using our replica modification sync capability. And then you can also conveniently replicate simultaneously to multiple AWS buckets across regions. So this is a great way that our customer that wants to use replication to replicate their data to different regions, they can make use of this. And you can also satisfy your compliance obligations that you have using S3 replication. So you can either replicate your data within to a different account, and so that way you're able to isolate the copy of your data, the redundant copy of your data, from any sort of malicious or rogue intent. And with replication time control, you have an SLA-backed replication feature that allows you to replicate 99.99% of your data within 15 minutes of uploading them. And so this way you can define a 15-minute recovery point objective, or RPO, for those really critical workloads that you have. And with replication, you can also turn on replication metrics. And this is a way for you to track how your replication status is doing. So you can track how many objects you have pending, how much data you have pending, and what is the latency between the source and the destination bucket when you're moving your data. And you can monitor this either using the S3 Management Console or using the Amazon CloudWatch dashboard. So this way you have, and you also have, additionally, you can use the replication metrics to also have failure events that help you diagnose and correct any issues with the replication as well. Cool, so now let's revisit our customer, and we'll go through sort of their first requirement that they had, which was being able to replicate all of their new data from their existing primary bucket in the US East region to two new regions in Europe and Asia. So the first thing they can do is use cross-region replication to replicate outside of their US region. And then they can use the multi-destination option within that to be able to replicate simultaneously to both their European and Asian regions. And when they're replicating their data, they choose to use intelligent tiering. So this is a way for them to be able to reduce the cost based on access. And so that way, they have the flexibility of choosing which storage class that they want to store that replica in. And then they turn on the replication metrics to be able to monitor how their replication status is doing. All right, so they had the requirement for new objects, but they also had some existing objects in their primary bucket. And this is where the S3 batch replication feature comes in really handy. And so S3 batch replication is a brand new feature that just released last month, and we're really excited to talk to you about it. So with this feature, you can synchronize your bucket by replicating all of your existing objects in that bucket. So you can use this capability for migrations where you need to create a disaster recovery plan that requires you to copy all of your data in your existing bucket, especially the data that you have before you set up your replication rules. Next, you can use it to set up a new region, and this is exactly what our example customer would want to use the batch replication capability for, to hydrate the two new regions that they want to set up. And you can also use the batch replication capability to rerun replication of any failed events that might have failed because of any permissions issues or otherwise. And lastly, S3 batch replication essentially combines the best of both S3 replication and S3 batch operations to provide you visibility into active job running times. It gives you a completion report that you can go and audit after the replication job completes. You have the option to review the batch replication manifest before you set up the job, and then you also have CloudTrail events on tracking the job status, right? So now let's go back to the customer. The second requirement that they had was being able to replicate any of their existing objects, and this is where they can use the S3 batch replication capability to replicate all of their existing objects to those two new regions that they've created. Now, they did have one more requirement, and that was basically they wanted to make it really easy for their application owners to quickly switch from a single region architecture to a multi-region paradigm. And this is where S3 multi-region access points comes in really handy, right? So the multi-region access points are a new type of a global endpoint for Amazon S3 that can be created in front of multiple buckets in different AWS regions. And so multi-region access points is not tied to a specific AWS region, but rather a unique global host name. And this unique global host name serves as the single endpoint for all of the data in the underlying buckets, which means you don't have to specifically hard code your clients or your applications to a particular regional endpoint in this case. So, and under the hood, the multi-region access points is effectively a routing capability and a routing feature that automatically routes to the lowest latency for all of your uploads and downloads. And it also always keeps these requests on the AWS global network, regardless of if the requests are internet-based, VPC-based, or if they came from your on-premises network. So with S3 multi-region access points, you can vastly simplify the development and maintenance of multi-region applications and have S3 do all of the hard work of routing and optimizing latency for you. And the process of setting up multi-region access points is very easy. So with a few clicks in the AWS Management Console or a single CLI command, you can get set up and create a S3 multi-region access point in front of one or multiple buckets. And then once you have the S3 multi-region access points created, you can configure public access, permissions, and set up replication optionally. And after this setup is complete, all the requests that are made to this S3 multi-region access point, they go through this global host name and are routed and served by the buckets with the lowest latency. Right. Great. So now we'll go back to the third requirement that our customer had, which was they wanted to be able to hand their application owners a single endpoint that they can use and then quickly transition from a single region architecture to a multi-region architecture. And this is where the multi-region access point comes in really handy. And so this way, their application owners don't specifically have to hard code any of their applications to a specific region. They can just use this new multi-region access point as an endpoint and switch to a multi-region paradigm. So now let's go into the customer problem again and look at the solution and put them in order of how this customer would use these features. So they would get set up with S3 batch replications, which allows them to be able to hydrate the two new buckets that they've created in the two new regions. Next, they'll create the multi-region access point that allows them to be able to route these requests effectively with the, to the buckets with the lowest latency. And then lastly, they can configure live replication on these buckets to be able to replicate any new data that's coming in. They turn on replication metrics, and they're also replicating this data to intelligent tiering to be able to reduce their cost, right? So with this, they have a resilient multi-region storage architecture to easily share and exchange data and content globally. All right, so now we'll have Neha on stage, and she'll talk about some of the best practices of how to set up all of these features.
Thanks, Aditya. All right, let's talk about some of the best practices for setting up replication. So first of all, for setting up S3 replication, we should be able to answer these 5 simple questions. The first one being, what? What are we trying to replicate? So this is basically choosing the replication scope. Do I want to replicate all the objects in my bucket, or do I want to filter it based on specific prefixes or tags, or a combination of both? The next question that we should try to answer is, where are we trying to replicate it? Basically here, we are picking up the destination bucket and the destination storage class type. The next question is who? Who is trying to replicate? So here, some customers like to choose existing IAM roles which have restricted policies and permissions versus some customers who like to create new IAM rules. So they don't really have to worry about these permissions and policies. The next question is how. So we will go over it in the demo later. There are some additional replication options, like choosing RTC or replication time control, which is backed by SLA, or configuring delete marker replication if you want to have your source bucket and destination bucket deletes in sync. The other options here are bidirectional sync and KMS encrypted objects. Last but not the least, the question that we should try to answer is when to use what replication. So if you're trying to replicate new objects, we recommend you using live replication, or if you're trying to replicate existing objects, you use S3 batch replication, which is a new feature. Now talking about S3 batch replication, you'll see it in the demo later that there are two options here. One, you can run the job directly as soon as it's ready, or you can wait for the job to be run so you can review the manifest file and other job details. So our suggestion here is always review the manifest file when you are replicating large set of objects, else you can run it without confirmation. Next, always ask for completion report. By default, it is checked, and we'll see it in some time. So once the job is done, you can go back to the completion report and audit it. You can check the status for your failed tasks or even all your tasks. Lastly, break up your large job into smaller jobs. So let's say if you have a 1 billion object jobs there. So our suggestion is break it into smaller jobs so you can optimize performance by making use of parallelization. Okay, moving on to MRAP best practices, we consider using intelligent tiering as your storage class choice when using MRAP, so that any read requests to the infrequently accessed data does not incur you any additional retrieval costs. Next, always enable S3 replication or RTC and replica modification sync option if you are using MRAP for disaster recovery and failover use cases. Also use the latest SDK version for SIG-v4 assigned requests when you are using MRAP. Next, if you're replicating KMS encrypted objects, configure replication rules outside of MRAP console and directly on the buckets, because these are very automated configuration of rules, so it's hard to pick and choose which KMS objects to replicate. So instead, if you can go to the source bucket directly and configure it there, you'll be able to pick and choose the objects there. Lastly, ensure bucket policies and MRAP policies are in agreement. If one is more restricted than the other, your requests are gonna fail. Okay, now that we have solved customer problem using S3 replication, and we have also seen some of the best practices for setup, let's go over a quick demo and see how it's done. So we'll do the demo in two parts today. Part 1, we will see the newly released feature of batch replication, and we'll use it to replicate existing objects. In part 2, we will move to MRAP or multi-region access points, and we'll see how it is configured and how to use it to replicate new objects. So I'm gonna now switch to my AWS Management Console. Okay, here I am under Amazon S3 service. So you will see I have configured a couple of buckets here for today's demo. So my SRC1 is the source bucket and DST2 is destination. Let's go and see SRC1 bucket. There should be a couple of objects here. So we do have 5 objects already. Let's go to destination bucket. It should be empty at this point. Let's quickly verify. All right, so this is empty. Let's go back to our source bucket. I want to talk about a couple of things there. So first, I'm going to move to Properties tab. The first thing here is bucket versioning. I have it as enabled. So you need to have bucket versioning enabled for replication to take place. Next, default encryption. I have that enabled as well, and I'm using SSE S3. You can always go ahead, edit it, and change it to KMS if you'd like. I'm going to stick to SSE S3 for today. Next, let's switch to Management tab. You will see I do not have any replication rules configured, so let's go ahead and create a replication rule. Okay, I'm going to name it PyDay demo rule. Okay, so for choosing the rule scope, I will apply it to all the objects in the bucket and pick up my destination bucket here. Okay, I will choose a new role so I don't have to worry about permissions. We'll leave encryption as is, and I'm gonna change my destination storage class type. So these are my infrequently accessed data, but when I do want to retrieve it, I want the retrieval time to be quick. So I'm gonna pick standard IA in this case. Moving on, for additional replication options, I'm not gonna pick any of these. So let's go ahead and hit save. As soon as I click on save, I get this new pop-up because of S3 batch replication. Do I want to replicate existing objects? So yes, I want to replicate existing objects. So this is going to create a one-time batch operations job. So let's go ahead and submit this. So this is the template. Either I can run the job directly or wait for the job to run so I can review the manifest file and other job details. So I'm going to stick to second option. You can also go ahead and save the manifest file. I'm going to leave it as is. Yes, I do want my completion report, so I will select it for all tasks and pick up my destination bucket here, DST2. Okay, choose path. Okay, and again, I'm going to create a new role for my batch operations job and hit save. Okay, now you'll see under batch operations that a new job has been created with a status new. So let's go ahead and click on that job. Okay, you will notice that the status is now preparing. So let's wait for a couple of minutes here and go ahead and refresh this. All right, now you'll see the status is awaiting your confirmation to run. So now you can go ahead, review your manifest file. If you gave a location, you'll see that location for manifest file here, and you can audit other job details and hit run job. Okay, now you'll see the status is active. Earlier it was preparing, now it went to active. So I'm gonna go ahead and refresh this one more time. Okay, status is completing. I'm gonna hit refresh one last time. Okay, the status is now completed. So now that the batch operations job is done, our replication should have happened. So let's go and verify that. I'm gonna go to my destination bucket, DST2. So these were my 5 objects which have been replicated here. Along with that, there is a job ID folder where you can see under results that this is my completion report. So if you want, you can go ahead and review your completion report here. Okay, now moving on, I'm gonna switch to part 2 of the demo. And for that, I'm gonna select multi-region access point from the left of the console. So as Aditya talked before, you can use it to build a multi-region storage solution. So when I click on multi-region access point, you will notice I do have a MRAP created already. It's only because it takes a couple of minutes to create, but I will show you how I created this MRAP. So let's just go ahead and click on create. Okay, I'm gonna name it demo just for now. And I'm gonna use 2 existing buckets, SRC1 and DST2. Okay, leaving all these as is and hit create. So I'll cancel it for now because I already have one in place. So as soon as the status is ready, I'm gonna go ahead and click this. You will see the buckets listed here. Next, let's go to replication tab. You will notice under replication summary that a one-way replication has been created from our SRC1 bucket to DST2. And this is coming from part 1 of our demo, where we created this replication rule for existing objects. And you'll see the same replication rule listed here under replication rules. Again, this is coming from part 1 of the demo for existing objects. Let's go ahead and create a new rule here. Okay, so here you get a template of choosing either replicate objects from one or more source bucket to one or more destination, or replicate among all specified buckets. I'm gonna pick up the second option here, and I'll choose both of my buckets. As soon as I select my buckets, you will notice that the rules will be automatically created for both of them. All right, moving on. So for scope, again, I'm gonna apply it to all the objects in my bucket. You will notice that the destination storage class is disabled here. And that's because I'm using the second option where all these specified buckets should be of same destination storage class type. So if you really want to change your destination storage class, we recommend you to use the first option here. Okay, moving on, for additional replication options, I'm going to select RTC in this case, or replication time control. You'll notice that the metrics and notifications got disabled, and that's only because they come by default with RTC. Another thing to notice is our existing replication rule will now be overridden. So that one was for batch replication job. Now it's going to be overridden for replicating new objects. Let's acknowledge that and create rule. You can monitor the progress for both the rules here. So once they are both succeeded, let's go ahead and close this tab. Now you'll notice under replication summary that a two-way replication has been created between our buckets. Okay, now that is set up, let's go ahead and pick one of our buckets. Doesn't matter which, let's pick up one. So I'm gonna pick up DST2 here, and I will upload some new objects. So I'm gonna add these new files, 4 pictures, and upload. Okay, so once all 4 pictures are done uploading, let's close this. All right, now you'll see in the DST2 buckets that we have 4 new pictures. So let's go back to the other bucket, SRC1, and see if these new objects have been replicated to SRC1 bucket. Let's hit refresh once. All right, and as expected, all 4 pictures have now landed in our SRC1 bucket. The other thing I want to talk about now is metrics. So for that, I'm going to go back to multi-region access point and select this MRAP from here and switch to replication tab. So if you scroll down here under replication tab, you will see replication metrics with different time frames. So I'm going to select last 1 hour and hit refresh. It takes a couple of minutes sometimes for these metrics to pop up. But the metrics that are going to be shown here are replication latency, bytes pending replication, and operations pending replication. Let's switch to last 12 hour and hit refresh. Okay, now we can see some metrics here. So here for our demo replication SRC1 rule, you will see that the replication latency is about 67 seconds. Let's see that number again. And you can also view the same in CloudWatch. Bytes pending replication is about 1.1 MB. And operations pending replication is count 4 because we uploaded 4 pictures there. So again, you can view all the same metrics in CloudWatch as well. Well, this was it for the demo today. Hopefully this was helpful.
Thank you so much, Neha and Aditya. I've got a couple of questions for you about this presentation today. Now, I know that this, most of what we're talking about here is the ability to use replication to achieve global reach, make use of AWS's many regions around the world. But I actually wanted to key in on one thing that you said here as part of your best practices, because it's a very common pattern for our customers to replicate, when they turn on replication for their bucket so that they have a copy of that data replicated to somewhere else, they often choose a destination bucket that's in a different AWS account. Why do people choose that?
Right. So with replication, it's a sort of a set it and forget it, where you can automatically use this capability to essentially back up your data. So specifically why customers choose a different account is to basically reduce their blast radius from an access standpoint. So it's a security benefit where you're able to replicate your data to a different account that is completely isolated from the rest of your organization. And so that way you have a redundant copy of your data, which you can use for backup and recovery. And we'll talk more about backup and recovery in one of the upcoming sessions. So this is a great way for you to be able to isolate your data and protect it in case you need it from any malicious or rogue intent.
That's right. I mean, when you think about a modern AWS environment, really of any size, today in the year 2022, you're often working across multiple of these AWS accounts. Now, one of the nice things about how S3 plays in with that, S3 and actually all other resources in AWS contained in an account are private and local to that account. So the benefit of replicating the data to another account is that other account has a completely different set of levers over there, which is beneficial, from, if you think about kind of your disaster recovery strategy, it can be useful to have these buckets owned by different set of entities and a different set of permissions. Okay, great. But coming back to this global reach, because that's really at the heart of what we've just talked about today. Can you guys walk me through that transition? Let's say I have a bucket with data serving an application in a single region, and I'm trying to expand that out in a way that kind of optimizes for latency across any region that I'm running in. So walk me through that transition. How do I get there?
Yeah, that's right. So basically the application is talking to the thing called access points, as though it's a single storage bucket. So the application doesn't really have to worry about which region gets the best latency or what data in which bucket or any of that. And the magic being Amazon Global Accelerator, which does the routing smart under the hood. So basically the application can really be talking to either of the buckets. And our features like S3 replication and Global Accelerator, they do all the hard work in the background.
So that's great. So really what's happening here is the client, the application, is really only aware of one endpoint in S3 that it needs to talk to. Now you mentioned a word, access points. Now access points is, at this point I'm going to say it's not a new feature of S3. We introduced it at the end of 2019 at reInvent. Can you say a few words? We've said the word access point a lot in this presentation. Can you explain to our viewers, what is this feature of S3? What is an access, they know what a bucket is, it has data. What is an access point to a bucket?
Sure, you can think of access points as a different way to access your data. Effectively, you have a different dimension from where you can access your data. And in this case, we're actually using this concept of access points to sort of extend that to a multi-region architecture, where instead of accessing a specific bucket through the sort of the traditional way where you're accessing it through the endpoint, you have another way for you to be able to access that data. And so, especially in this multi-region paradigm, you have a great way where this is a different level of abstraction, where it abstracts away sort of these regional constructs and have a global construct with which you can access all of this data.
All right, so basically, I think the way you can understand this, right, is it's kind of an alternative endpoint to reach the bucket, to get and to retrieve and send it data. And what you've done with this multi-region access point feature is use that kind of almost as an abstraction. It can talk to this bucket in this region. It can talk to that bucket in that region. They're replicating both ways, so it's mirror images of the data in both of these buckets. And your application doesn't need to know where it's being routed for optimal latency. All right, guys, we got one more question for you. Steve and I are taking a vote here. Your favorite kind of pie?
First?
Yeah, I can go first. So my favorite kind of pie is a key lime pie.
Okay.
Key lime.
All right, creative choice.
Does pizza pie count?
Pizza pie.
You can have whatever kind
count,
of pie you like today.
Because again, we're global reach here. So
Yes.
that is an international sort of pie. Not really anymore.
No.
Not really. It doesn't count. Hey, pizza counts. We have one vote for pizza. All right. Well, thank you so much, Neha and Aditya. Thank you so much for telling us about how S3 can help you with your global reach applications.
All right, so we've had some great sessions this morning. We opened with, obviously, Kevin's keynote, which we're going to talk about shortly. Managing security at scale with S3, data protection and compliance, and we just finished up with multi-region replication architectures. We're going to take a very short fun break now. We're going to wish S3, happy 16th birthday. And we
All
learned in
right.
the keynote this morning that, hey, it can now pilot a hang glider. It can get a Washington State driver's license. I can't remember, what was some of the other options that it could do now? Get a passport.
Get a passport,
Get a
which
passport.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know S3 was going to travel. I guess
Well,
the only
we
place
just
it can
learned
travel,
about that. S3 is traveling. We have multi-region features.
This is true. I
Yeah.
was going to consider the only place it could travel now was into space, right?
Into space.
That would be cool.
Yes.
But yeah, we're going to take a short break for a video to wish Amazon S3 a happy 16th birthday.
Enjoy the video. We'll be back in a little bit.